and then everybody wants to drive slower, you know how that works.
And some without lights.
Many without lights.
You know, I can understand all these new cars got automatic, and they still run low.
Yeah, well, like mine, it always has running lights on, no matter what. If it's running, it's running. They're
Down
on,
south,
so.
they even, it's a law, you have to have your lights on, even in the rain.
Yeah, which isn't bad. Well, very good. Well, hey, we'll get started right away. Thanks everybody for making it out on a kind of an odd weather day, I would say.
Called Michigan.
Feels like we're still in a little bit of summer, but looks like we're gonna have a good week. No rain, which is
Yeah.
probably a good thing for anybody that's on a lake right now or a river. But probably the biggest thing going on right now at the state level is we've got a budget we're working on. And, I know people would like to see us have it done. We will have it done, I will tell you for sure next week. You know, as we sit right now, the governor walked out of negotiations last week, so it's gonna be done through the House and the Senate without her participation until it gets on her desk, but we'll see if she comes back to the table this week. But I will tell you this much on the budget. We will have a balanced budget. We'll increase our school aid funding. Right now, it's projected to be at 15.2 million, which is considerably higher than it's been in the past.
How much?
15.2
Million?
billion, excuse me.
Thank you, I picked up on that. Whoa,
Billion, excuse me, with 1.2 billion put in above and beyond that into the teacher pension program. So that, you know, it's not included in the school aid, that 1.2, that's above and beyond. So that is a good thing. We're looking at 500 million extra in roads, which would put us at what the governor is looking at $1.9 billion for roads without a 45-cent gas tax. And we're looking at $120 million put into what we're gonna call the Safe Drinking Water Initiative. So we thought we had a great budget that hit almost all of her targets that she wanted. She did come out and say if we put the extra 500 million into the roads that she would veto the bill. She does not want that in there. She wants us to live with the program we have, and she wants it done another way because she really needs the 45-cent gas tax to backfill the majority of her budget. So I will tell you that's where the argument will be. If we send it to her desk and she vetoes it, I want you to be aware it's not because we didn't deliver what she wanted. She walked away because she felt that what we were doing was more than what she wanted to give without the tax. So that's kind of where we're at on the budget. We did get a couple bills passed through committee. One was a telepharmacy bill that has passed and gone to the Senate floor and actually voted out and is now in the House. And then last week, we voted through the Senate floor, what I'm gonna call the physician reinvestment, or basically a kickback for the doctors that move to true rural areas. They would be able to collect up to $250,000 over a 10-year period, above and beyond their salary for school debt, if they have school debt, which the average doctor now is somewhere around $300,000 or greater in debt. We can't compete in rural areas. I'm just gonna tell you right now, the situation with the federal law, the Stark law on doctor repayment, where salaries, because of the way it works, unfortunately in rural areas, we can't compete with the Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor.
what's rural? What, are we rural?
Yes, anything under 40,000 county
Okay.
population would be rural, and they also have to be a hospital in need. Well, every hospital's in need right now. We're not graduating enough doctors, and it's unfortunate. We do have a package of bills that are gonna come out certificate of need bills, and I'm not sure how many are familiar with certificate of need. A certificate of need is a law that's been passed many years ago which governs medical care. And this committee can rule to allow facilities to add beds, add services, and if they don't deem it necessary, they disallow. And what we have right now is we have some certificate of need issues that I feel need to be repealed and taken out. One of them is psychiatric care and beds. We have a massive shortage, if you really look at our mental health area. However, if you look under certificate of need, it says we have an excess of mental health availability, which we know there is nothing in our area at all. And perfect example is Spectrum Health holds all the beds from Hadley when they had Hadley, and they won't relinquish those beds, so those beds are tied up at Spectrum and can't be used. And we're looking to eliminate that rule from CON and allow the expansion of some mental health facilities throughout the state. So there's 5 or 6 of them total. They will create, I'm sure, some stir in the medical field, because there's a lot of people that don't like to see certain things relinquished because they want the hospitals to be able to maintain. But we've been meeting with the parties interested, and I would say 5 out of the 6, I think we're on common ground. Mental health is one that we've struggled with, and then some cardiac care. We're about halfway there, and I think we'll come to an agreement, and we'll be fine with that. But that's kind of where we're at, what's happening real quickly in Lansing. And I'll just open it up for questions, and we'll do the best to answer them. Hello, Jamie.
What's the bind on cardiac care?
Well, cardiac care, well, if you look at the whole cardiac, there's some pretty touchy open heart surgery, things like that. We don't want to include that in the cardiac care, that it could be done in an off-site or out of a hospital area because of what a facility would need. But like a pacemaker, some of those other things right now has to be done inside a hospital, and the cost is extremely expensive. It can be done safely as an outpatient, to insert a pacemaker and a couple of those things. So they've agreed on that, and we're working out the details, and I believe we'll get to common ground on that. Yes, Ted?
Can you explain that Hadley, and the pharmacy bill? What's the Hadley to keep the beds?
Well, you're talking the psych beds?
Yeah, what is it?
Right now, under CON, if you look at Spectrum in Grand Rapids, or in Ludington, we had Hadley Mental Care or Psychiatric Care Facility in Ludington. And about a half a dozen years ago, they closed that mental health facility down. But under CON, I believe there was 16 beds in that facility that were set for mental health, and Spectrum still owns the right to those beds. Even though they're not providing the service, they own the right to those beds. And they're not relinquishing those rights, which will not allow somebody else to come in. It's the other issue where we've gone to, CON was written to protect our smaller hospitals, to make sure that people didn't come in and basically cherry pick the low-hanging fruit, the profitable stuff. But as our hospitals have been, what I'm gonna say, gobbled up by larger facilities like Munson, Spectrum, they've closed some of these services down in our local hospitals and moved them to one of their main campuses. But nobody can provide that service under CON. So that's that one. And the other question was?
Explain the pharmacy, and especially how it relates to medicines and drugs and Canada, if you would.
Oh, Canada?
Let's go, you know, I know we can go across the border. You know, I get VA and it doesn't affect
Right.
me, but, I mean, some of
Yeah.
the poor people that have to cut back on their medicines to
Yeah,
survive.
here, well, the pharmacy bill that we put, the remote pharmacy would allow a pharmacy to be put into an area that doesn't have service now, with a true pharmacist overseeing that via internet and, you know, video. The drug importation is a whole different number, and that's with Canada. As you know, the federal government has ruled that that's, you know, illegal to do. Canada has not supported that because under their system, they only have X amount of drugs, and they figured that if the United States started gobbling up some of those through there, they would not have enough prescriptions. The other part is the safety issue. And truly, right now, there is no true way to inspect and make sure, and regulate any of the drugs that are being sold in Canada to make sure that they're actually the true prescription that you're looking at.
My brother used to buy prescriptions in Canada, they shut it down, I think, at 30% of the cost of what we pay here.
Correct.
Same manufacturer, exactly, same box, same manufacturer.
And part of that is through their taxation system and their single-payer healthcare system. The taxpayer's paying 60% of their wage to have those drugs in Canada, but they're paying for them up front. And with us coming in, and this is where Canada has said, whoa, wait a minute, you know, we're a single-payer system, we're charging our citizens X amount of dollars on every dollar they make. That goes into that. You as Americans are coming in and taking that out of our system. And if we only have 10 and you take 8 of them, we only have 2 for the Canadians, and that's not, so that's why they've opposed this, because the other part is that they're not paying for, they're truly not paying for any of the development and, you know, overall inspection of these drugs. And a lot of these drugs are being imported from China, and we're not 100% positive. Well, in some cases, we know they are not properly being made by a major manufacturer. Have the same ingredients, but they may not be being made to the quality standards what the United States expects their drugs to be. And I was just at a conference at Pfizer. I think everybody knows who Pfizer is in this room. Pfizer hired a former FBI, to come in and basically work on fake drugs, or drugs that were being bootlegged in to the United States. And it was very interesting to see what they found. You know, an example of, everybody knows what the blue pill is. And this gentleman said,
Not everybody.
well, I think we've watched it on TV enough, we know what the blue pill is, but, you know, he basically showed a single person can buy the ingredient off the internet, put it together, hand stamp out a Viagra pill for pennies on a dollar, one pill at a time through a press. They sell them for about $10 a pop on the black market. And he says, truly, when we investigated, found it, they, of course, did the ingredients, and of course, they were the legal ingredients, but they weren't mixed properly, and it had whatever drug is that makes it work the way it was. He says, this is the one that says it could last for 8 hours, it most likely will. And it was very interesting to see, but they could do 1,500 pills a day. And they showed the track that it would come from China to Great Britain, to an off island, and back to Great Britain to be mailed to somebody in the United States. So that it looked like it was actually coming from a legal pharmacy in a country that had similar values. So this is some of the reasons what we're concerned about with drug importation, is that we're not really truly getting the drug that the customer is supposed to have. So, we got a lot of work to do, and that's an issue of what we do. The true problem with our drug costs right now, I believe, and it's an easy picking mark, is what they call the PBM, Pharmacy Benefit Manager. And when we set this up years ago, it isn't coming back to us, because every one of us has a different health plan. So when people say, I wanna know what this Cialis or whatever, any of those drugs cost, you know, if I have no insurance, it's $240, but if I have insurance, it's, one person's buying it for 100, one's buying it for 60, and it's all because of the rebates and the system that goes through. It's very complicated. Don't understand it 100%. Every time you talk to somebody, the story gets a little different. It's a murky hole. But we're working on making sure that we have quality product at a much better price, delivered to us as people that go to the pharmacies, and we expect our pharmacists to sell us a drug at the best price that we can get. Very complicated. It's a messy, messy system. And as you see, the federal government has not come to an agreement to work on that. And until we can get the federal government to help us out, it's very difficult for a state, because we've asked, well, what happens if we left the PBMs and wanted to directly work with the companies? They said, well, that's fine, you just won't get the rebates and it'll cost you more money. Well, we can't do that either. So somehow we've gotta come together and work on a system that we can make sure that when folks go to the store, to the pharmacy, that they're getting proper medication at a fair price, without all this rigmarole that goes through it. Does that help, or make it more
Yeah.
complicated?
I didn't know, and I forgot about the subsidy, that the Canadian citizens subsidized it.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing. Most of us don't think about that. And you know what, it does, it makes you upset when you go in there and say that, but they're going in and basically have the copay, it's already done because they paid for it out of their pocket. And, but then again, through this investigator, they've had where Americans have come in, crossed the border to go buy the medication, bought it, left, they tested it, medication wasn't the same. So they went back and tested again, then they sent in a Canadian resident, bought the product, but it was legitimate. So there's a huge black market. And how we think of these things as people to break a system, but we figure it out. And, you know, it's extremely important that when somebody thinks they're buying a drug that's gonna help them, they need to make sure that that drug is right. So it's a huge discussion. We're gonna have a major battle on our hands in the future to continue to try to drive this cost down, because it is costing us a lot of money. What else can I, yes, sir?
The city's interested in taking back the building official responsibilities, issuing our own permits for, you know, building, HVAC, all of those, currently done by the state. I'm having difficulty with Laura in the Bureau of Construction Codes. We sent in our application packet, then it was deemed not complete because of an ordinance. I sent it back. And it's been over 3 weeks to get a response form. I've sent 3 emails. Finally, late last week, they confirmed that they received it, but I continually ask, are we gonna make the October agenda? And all I hear is crickets from them, so.
We'll check into
I've
that.
got some-
I can
I got
see
some
he
information.
just gave me an eye that we'll call on that for you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it, because my experience is that the state is very reluctant to allow communities to take back what is as a statutorily approved role of the
Understand.
local government, so.
And I really, you know what, all I can tell you is dealing with Laura, they move at their own pace. And that's unfortunate, but they're the control of a lot of the licensing. And what we do is we'll check into it and we'll see if we can, sometimes a few phone calls, we can push that from the bottom of the pile to get it up to the,
Any help that you could
You got it.
give would be appreciated.
Jamie will get some of that contact information from you.
Is
I
that
saw a
just-
question
Is that
somewhere.
just citywide or is that
In the city,
countywide?
city.
City.
Just city.
How did
I'm-
you, how did you lose it initially?
Well, the city gave it up, a number of years ago, or probably 2008, 2009,
Right.
with all the budget issues. And so now we wanna have a contractor do it for us, and we've already got the agreement in place with a contractor. So now we have to go through this process with the state to get it back.
On the same token, we've had problems in northern Manistee, and with the roads. Now, they just restoned them, they were beautiful, and a week ago, they started, I know there's a Farmers Act, and they can haul this liquid manure, sludge, whatever, and there is somebody that bought property and is hauling. In 2 days, they had 15 loads go by us in open dump truck, 20-yard dumps. And it was slewing out all over this road. They dumped it in a field. And it's 15 plus, because 2 days I counted 15, I know they did it the day before. They haven't dissed it, they haven't spread it. It's just piled up. And with the heat coming back, it is smelling, we're gonna get, we have a creek at the bottom of ours, there's a pond. We went to the supervisor, call the road commission. You call the road commission, you don't get any answers. Went to a board meeting, they says, call the DEQ. Called the DEQ, left 2 messages, nobody returns a call. What are you supposed to do? And then we found out, one guy on the board did talk to a guy at the road commission that we had talked to, and they said they had followed it, and this guy is from Wexford County that's hauling it to Manistee County, so you've got 2 counties involved. I thought they had to be in container trucks,
A slurry wagon.
slurry wagon, or whatever, so that this stuff didn't happen. And I have pictures. I don't know, but it'd be nice if people would call back, communicate with the people when they call their offices. We had bear problems, call the DNR. We had an injured bear. I says, there's people around us that own property from Detroit, they're gonna be up for the holiday weekend. They have children, there's an injured bear on 3 legs. Never a response.
I can make some comments on that. Response time with some of the departments has gotten very poor. And I'm not saying it was perfect before, but we've got some major issues. I think everybody knows what's going on at the Secretary of State, and the lines have gone from 35 minutes to 90 plus. There's a lot of things that are happening. And all I can tell you is we'll get the information and make a call to DEQ for you.
There's one, that's not the greatest, but
It looks, is it dry?
no, it was coming out like concrete. It might have dried out a little now.
Okay.
Even after the rain, you could see it on the road.
Where's the slurry coming from?
Well, Wexford County,
I know,
Wexford
but
County,
there's no-
no
eight
answer.
mile
Nobody will give
road.
us
There's no plant there to make slurry.
it's farm.
Well, farm, it comes from the
From a
farm.
big farm.
So we'll
But
get
I
some
know
information.
Newaygo and Ottawa, they're supposed to haul it in enclosed truck, because we
Right.
go down there camping, we have
The road
family.
now, it's not.
And now you have this new road that's good. Is there weight restrictions on these
No.
back roads?
Well,
No.
there's weight restrictions, yeah, all vehicles have to fall under a weight restriction.
Well, I asked there and they said that county road don't have no weight restriction, except in the frost level.
There's still weight restrictions for axle statewide, it's set,
But it's an open 20-yard dump.
okay? Yeah, I would say that they probably didn't exceed the weight restriction.
Yeah, I wouldn't, how would you know?
Now,
Only
after
if
all the
somebody
rain and the
quit it.
truck got stuck, down there and was stuck overnight when he went down there to dump the last load that we had seen when we went to the board meeting. We haven't seen anybody around, so I don't know if somebody contacted him, if they're, you know, what's happening with it, nobody knows.
I would think that somehow in the state should be notifying like a township supervisor, so you'd be allayed. I could, if you were the supervisor, I could call you, hey, what's going on, do you know? He could relay the message, but just to pass off, call the road commission. And that guy, I don't think he'll ever call me back because him and I got sort of short. But he understood where he's at. Now, you worry about disease and everything that they're talking about, now this is just open. I would've understood if they would've out and spread it right in the field and dished it down, it'd been done with, but now this is just sitting there, this has been almost a week.
Okay,
It was there this morning when we come through.
okay.
I'm just,
Yeah,
same
go
thing,
ahead.
if you just wanna give me your information and we can have some conversations and help me be able to make some calls versus, you
I
know,
have
okay, wonderful,
information and pictures.
wonderful.
My secretary.
There you go.
That's so good.
Phone calls, you know, that, we can do some checking, we can find out, but, you know, the right to farm gives farmers, but under some of the things that we've done, when it comes to an actual liquid manure, they, under the standard, there's criteria that they have to meet. Now, I don't know what this product is, so I need to be careful what it is, but the true liquid manure,
Come on,
they pay a lot of money. You know, these farmers are actually paying a fair amount of money to purchase this. And when it comes to that, they usually wanna disc it in as fast as they can, because every time they let it air longer, they lose some of the, so I don't know what the product is, all we can do is look at it, but I will tell you that most farmers work very hard to make sure that they are with that standard, because I know a friend of mine, he bought a lot of liquid slurry from them, and it's expensive. And they were basically disking.
Ready to put it down.
I mean, they spread it, and as soon as they had a wide enough path, they were disking it in. So, I'm not sure what the product is, all I can tell you is we'll get the information. and
Well, and another thing, from one county to the next.
Well, and that's legal,
That is,
that was
okay.
absolutely, that's.
Oh, we couldn't get that information.
Information on it.
Yeah, under right to farm it, they can purchase, a lot of these people are purchasing that slurry on purpose, because they need it, it's a natural way to put nitrogen into the soil.
Absolutely.
And hold it, and it's better, and we have very strict standards of how much you can put down.
But I just didn't think the way they were doing this was according to oil.
Yeah, we'll find out for you.
Yeah.
What else can I answer?
Well, you know, the road commission won't
I'll
help you
get you.
at all. Just-
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the redistricting commission, that's
Yeah.
supposed to start in the spring, and there was nothing put into the budget to finance it?
There is.
There is
Oh, yes,
now?
it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that we refused to fund it when there was no commission. There was nobody there. So the money is there, but we said, we're not gonna allocate that money until there's actually a commission there.
Are they
Yeah.
working on it?
Well, right now it's tied up in court, so, there is no commission at this point in time that's been put together.
Money's in the budget though.
Money is in the budget, right? It's just, and I know that was a big thing, everybody was screaming about that, but we said, wait a minute, there hasn't even been a commission that's even put in place yet. Why are we gonna put this much dollars into that fund and basically let them spend it when there was no committee there? We just trying to oversee to make sure we don't spend money where we're not supposed to be spending it. Yes, sir.
Did you establish some work requirements for Medicaid
We
recipients?
did last week, yes, we voted those through.
And what might those be?
It established the reporting time and how much time they have to be able to report without losing the benefit. Because I can't remember exactly what was 14 days now to report instead of 7. Some of the work requirements or some of the exempts that were allowed and were passed through, and those were voted in for what was qualified as disabled or work requirements. But it was basically passed through, I think it was 100%, if I remember right. There was no votes on that.
Did you increase it, or did you just
Increase.
modify it, or
Increase,
their work requirements?
no, we did not increase.
Okay, so you just modified.
We
the
might
existing-
modified some of the reporting so that people wouldn't get booted out if they, because in some cases, the way the system is, you had to report on X day, and if you didn't make that day, you got kicked out even though you worked. Well, anybody, I'm sure nobody in this room has been on that system. It is not the easiest system to manipulate and manage through. So this just gave those reporting standards were expanded out so that we didn't have folks falling off, unintended. Again,
Did you do anything with voter registration
No.
recently?
no, not currently.
Not automatic voter registration either?
I'm not remembering anything like that.
Just, you voted on a couple bills, I was wondering if you'd remember.
You'd have to tell me what the bill
No,
number is,
that's
and I'd
okay.
have
If
to
you
go
don't
back.
remember them, there's no sense in worrying about it, so.
Yeah,
The federal might take over, but what are you thinking about red flag laws for gun
I have a real issue with that.
confiscation?
I have a real issue with that. I think that there's criteria that's already set up for that, and I think in today's world, for somebody to come up and say, you know, John is a problem and he's threatening me or he scares me, I think you need to take his guns away, that's an issue. The courts have the right to look at that now with doctors, and why are we just gonna throw out more rules and regs that allow confiscation of guns? There's proper channels to be able to go through that, and I would vote against anything under the red flag rules or what they classify red flag.
So you're gonna fight for due process and
Absolutely.
all that,
I
but
mean, there's too many flaws in the red flag rules that would cause great concern to me. And now, I will say with that, we need to protect the doctors when they make those calls. And if a doctor makes a call that somebody shouldn't have a gun, then we need to back that doctor if it's a mental health need. But what's happening right now is we have doctors that may feel that somebody should be held for a period of time, but if they make that call, they're getting sued and potentially tied in litigation. And we need to make sure that somebody has proper mental health care if they need it, to make sure that that's what it is, but we just can't allow general public to come in and say, I'm threatened by John, and you need to take his gun, because it could be somebody that just doesn't like him. And that's a concern.
You know, if I was a doctor, I seriously doubt if I'd get into that arena.
Well, so that's-
And reporting people, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
not,
Well, and that's what's happened,
Yeah.
and, you know, if a person, and I've always said it, if a person's gonna do harm to somebody, we need to help them get to the stable peace. I mean, if we took their gun away, that in most cases in today's world, and you hate to say it, they'll find a different way. We see that now, if somebody doesn't have it, then we just had the mass stabbing. But of course, that doesn't get it really any play, because the news doesn't work that. They wanna make guns the bad thing all the time, and guns are not bad. It's just there's bad people behind the guns, and, you know.
It's the
a
black
good-
market and the stealing of the gun.
Correct. Black market is a huge thing. Look, you know, I tell people, look at Illinois, the city of Chicago, strictest gun rules in the country, and highest murder rate. I said, so, you know, by taking away a gun, is that in setting real higher standards, is that fixed our problem? It's actually made it worse, because now law-abiding citizens that could have protected themselves have nothing to protect themselves, and somebody that wants to create a crime, you know, it would be like telling our police department, you can't carry a gun. I mean, what are they gonna do? And so we got a lot of things. Yes, Mike?
I read or saw on TV probably, and if you can't believe TV, who can you believe? 65% of all deaths by guns are suicide, is that true?
That is very close to the number. I don't know the exact number.
How come we're not talking about suicide? Suicide is
Well,
a problem.
I will tell you, we are working very hard right now with a bunch of things to help. And that goes back to our mental health situation. But, you know, we just passed out of my committee on Thursday, a mental health hotline, which, you know, I don't know, you know, we're doing anything we can right now to try to have better access to care. This hotline, I believe, will give us, in theory, will give us better care if somebody calls in, says, I'm contemplating suicide. You know, before we tell them to go to the hospital, well, hospitals aren't capable. This will give them counseling, or give them phone numbers and things, and we'll follow back up to make sure people have better access to care. You know, suicide is a terrible thing. We can look at right now, what's the highest industry of suicides right now, and it's farming. Farmers right now are crashing. We have a huge amount. Teen suicide higher than it's ever been. You know, we need to continue to work. So suicide is on the top of our list. We put a committee together to look at some of the things, you know, if a suicide takes place, what did we miss? What signals did we miss? What can we do that's better, and try to, you know, folks, I don't know. You know, we're living in a different world.
When I and other veterans call the VA, and I call Cadillac or Saginaw, if you're thinking about suicide, before they even get you through, call this and call that, you know. My question is, why don't you just go, bam, get me right into somebody, and says, okay, now I gotta write that number down.
Well, we've done a poor job, and I'm not gonna say that, and you know, I've advocated that, you know, the VA hospitals, I really truly believe that everybody should just, if you're a vet, that you should be able to, you know, go anywhere you need. You have a card,
Yeah.
just like you have an insurance card, and a VA hospital should specialize in some of the specialty areas of concern. Hey, see, man, we've done a poor job, and you know, suicide is, you know, before the stigma with suicide, I mean, you know, and I don't wanna come across that we're being cold here. The stigma on suicide versus what it used to be 30 years ago and today have changed. It's not, yes,
I tell you, they've made people's lives miserable by, you know, 80% of the people live from paycheck to paycheck. They send all the good jobs to China, the big corporations have them. The US politicians have not protected the people. So they allowed it to happen. All of manufacturing is gone. We're left with low-wage jobs and no insurance. And the government has to subsidize the people working for Walmart, for example. You know, it's crazy. I mean, but can I ask you another question?
okay?
Do you take an oath to protect the Constitution as a state senator, the US Constitution?
Yeah.
Do you? The lady up here, she mentioned due process before. I worked with Ray Franz to get a resolution for the USS Liberty, guys. One of my good friends, the only surviving Marine on the USS Liberty, was Bryce Lockwood. He came to Manistee when we put the plaque up. That's probably the only plaque that exists in the whole country, where the guys blame the Israeli government. Ray was working with the state legislature, could not get I want to have a USS Liberty Day. He could not get the name of Israel in there. There's a Haaretz newspaper article that was written 2 years ago. And the title of that article was, "But sir, the ship is American." So the Israelis knew they were attacking an American ship. The pilot refused to do it. When he landed, they put him in jail. They knew they were attacking an American ship, they killed 34 guys. And I wanted to have a USS Liberty Remembrance Day on June 8th every year. And they refused to do it if we put the name Israel in it, because they don't want the bad publicity, that's the reason. They would do it if I said no. I said, they did what they did, let them take responsibility for it. And my question is, would you support such a thing?
Well, you and I have had this conversation. And you know, and I admire what you and Ray have done, and I agree. I think there's a lot of issues that we need to work on. Is that a fight that, with some of the attitude that we have in the country and in the state? I don't know. All I can tell you is that I'll investigate what Ray did. I have not seen what he wrote, so, you know,
Will you get back with me on that?
yeah, let me dig into what went on and what the history was on that. I have, you know, I've worked on, right now, anything that we can do to assist veterans. I mean, we had a veteran in, you know, I'm gonna jump, but Mason County that was struggling and was gonna lose his home. And he didn't know about the rule of, because he was disabled, to be able to have his taxes abated, and they were gonna take his house because he couldn't pay his taxes.
I know, but this is the right to due process.
Right, but you know, I'm just saying.
They have a
we-
right to a fair
right,
investigation. I
Right.
say they do, you know.
Right,
That's
so
my point.
let me look into that. I'm not pushing you off. Let me study and understand exactly what you're asking and what the bugaboos have been in the past, and I'll get back to you.
All right, appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I think our President Trump is helping the veterans more than anybody in a long, long, long time.
I would agree with you, and I also believe there's been a attitude change with the American public, with our veterans, especially with the Vietnam vets. But I will tell you this, I did the Labor Day parade in Manton. And of course, you know, it's Labor Day morning, you think, how many people are gonna be at this? I mean, it's unbelievably big. And I try, hi there, I try to make sure that I shake, you know, everybody's hand if they're wearing a hat, a veteran hat or whatever. And I went up to this gentleman, and I'm gonna guess that he was in his late 80s, might have been a little bit younger than that. I went up and he struggled to get to his feet, and I shook his hand and I said, thank you for your service. And I appreciate what you did, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do today. And I mean, the tears that fell out of that, I mean, that tells me we've not done enough for somebody to put their life on the line. And you know what? It touches your heart when you see somebody that still has that much pride in our country. When I think that we've lost, we've bickered, we've fought each other, and we forget what the main principles of this great country was built on. And we forget that, you know what, under the Constitution, you have that right to assemble, you have that right to protest. But when you start tearing it down, and you don't like our country because of what it believes in, I have a problem. I think,
Would you apply those thoughts to the USS Liberty guys, please?
I'm listening. Yes, ma'am.
I had an uncle that died on a ship in Hawaii, and my grandmother took her, she was a Gold Star mother, she wrote letters to every serviceman out of Muskegon County. And the government flew her to Germany, and she spoke to a convention over there. Now, we went south a number of years. We seen, when we first went down 10 years ago, they were a lot more shaking hands and thank you for your service down there than they were up here. It is starting to come around up here, but it's not like it is in the south. And that's sad.
I agree.
Attitude.
Attitude.
I agree.
I was born in Holland, and
Now
Yeah.
Michigan.
Holland, Europe. And the 82nd Airborne liberated the town when I was born. I was born after. So my dad went through the war with 3 kids, young kids under 5. And they They landed on my grandmother's field, the 82nd Airport, that big airdrop,
Mhm.
gliders, and that's still called Little America today, and the Dutch people are very, very grateful to Americans, I know that for a fact. Very patriotic for Americans.
It's, you know, I haven't visited, you know, Europe to look at some of that. I'm an avid Civil War buff and I love World War II. But, you know, to look at how we did and the folks that, you know, stormed that beach that day and how many lost their lives. I mean, it's an amazing thing, because if we didn't succeed, where would we be today? And I think ultimately that, you know, we've got to look at what potentially we complain about some of the things that are happening today, and I understand, but that we have that right to do that. We have that freedom. But if we wouldn't have won, or we wouldn't have entered the war, what potentially would have happened? We don't know, because history proved itself to where it's at.
But
But
they
you know
aren't
what, there's-
teaching that much of it anymore. And that goes, and the
Well, then
children-
now we're getting into a
learn
different
to
subject on
different-
education.
right.
That's never gonna be an easy win, but you know what, we need to make sure our young people understand, and I think we're seeing some of that turn, but we also have to understand that we have what we've done under the Constitution of the Bill of Rights and everything that's there, that, you know, this gives us our freedoms and what we expect daily to be able to do in the United States, and sometimes we forget. And we have done a poor job where our kids don't wanna learn it. I mean, we've all seen the interviews where they've asked them, you know, what does 4th of July mean? I mean, you know, but we haven't done a good job as parents. I'm gonna tell you that, you know, those are some of the things that it's Independence Day, so, yes, ma'am.
I do have two compliments to extend to you. One is from Henrietta Bricker, who is 96 years old. The other is from Florence Anderson, who is 97. They said to thank you for your commitment to our community and our state.
No, thank you. Pass that on and tell them I appreciate that.
I will.
Yes,
The news tells us that every day, 22 veterans kill themselves. If you give it a given population of the same size of non-veterans, I don't know if that 22 is a lot or if it's not.
it's high, but I can't tell you what that number is. I just-
Because like you were talking about farmers, how many farmers are veterans? So did they kill themselves because they're a veteran or because they're a farmer?
I don't know much.
You can lie with statistics, I can tell you that.
Well, you can, and I will tell you that's part of what that group that we put together is to look at, to see, you know, what we could have done. I mean, you know, it's a voluntary, commission that put together. There's no pay that goes with it, but it's made up of doctors and professionals and general public. So you know, we're trying to figure this out. I don't know. I mean, you know what, you throw in there and you say, will it do us any good? I don't know, but you wanna know what, if we don't do anything, how are we gonna fix anything? And that's the problem. I'm not a big work group person, I'll be honest with you. I think work groups can be one of those things you talk around in a circle and you start over again. But I do know that we have gotta come up with solutions. We've gotta come up with solutions or ideas that we can implement that can help with some of these things, and, you know.
So next time you'll have the answer?
Well, Michigan Farm Bureau, their newsletter they send out every month, actually addressed that situation about farmers and suicide. So
What do they say? I'm not gonna read the article.
Number one, it's most of your dairy farmers, because the price of milk has dropped out and they can't afford to. If you go over to McBain Grain, you can talk to those folks and find out how many dairies are closing weekly. They just had 3 more go out when I was over there last week picking up my grain.
People still have to drink milk.
Well, talk to your
Price of
animal
it.
rights activists on that one.
I'm not gonna talk to them
Yeah,
either.
you don't want to, but that's why. And these dairy
Right.
farms have been in families for generation after generation, and then when the bottom goes out of milk prices, they can't afford to even feed their cows anymore, let alone their families.
And they're in
So-
debt up to their ears or beyond.
Cherry
Okay.
farmers, same situation right now.
Yeah, they're going broke.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Sure.
importing product from Turkey with no tariff on it, and we can't even produce it in the state for the price that we're buying it in. Now, since we've worked hard on some things that curbed the importation, but, we got a major problem, and we can't continue to live on past rules and that's where this manufacturing, and why we lost some of these, because they could go over there, buy labor cheap, and ship it over here and not pay anything. It was like a reverse tax, and they were making, and I will say our president is taking some heat, but he's doing what's right to make sure that we bring things back, and he has brought a lot back, but we've got a long ways to go. But, milk, there's no reduction in the herd, and that's part of the issue we have right now, is that when a farmer goes out, those cows are being bought by a larger producer, and he's making his money on volume, and he's got a business model that is working, because if you go over to McBain, kind of the heart of some of our serious milk producers, but what's also hurting us in what we're working on in economic development and down in the state is processing. We don't have very many processing plants near where the Michigan farmer is, and they're shipping that process out. And, we've had loads of milk go across on the Badger, because they can actually buy milk from Michigan, ship it to Wisconsin cheaper than they can buy it in Wisconsin, and that's a problem for our farmers. And, we've gotta figure out what we can do, but part of it is we've overbuilt, underproduction has caused a serious glitch in the system. And we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we can continue to move that forward, because the farmer is struggling. It's not just dairy. We've got a major problem, beef's another one that we've got. We've got the general public that's moving hard right now to put, because of herds and their size, and they do produce poo, and gas from that poo, that they're trying to change some of the laws that would cause a reduction in any type of production facility, be it pigs or cattle, because of that. Yeah.
I have to say, I almost killed my dad when I was a teenager, because he was complaining about the price of cherries hadn't gone up in years. And I just kind of commented, I said, if half the farmers in Michigan and Wisconsin would cut down all their cherry trees, or all the farmers would cut down half their cherry trees, the price would go up. And he just about had a heart attack on the spot. And he knew right then that I probably was never gonna be a farmer. So,
Yeah, well,
I still feel bad.
we do that in a lot of things in industry.
It's called
If
supply and
we find a
demand.
winner, we're all jumping on because we wanna do that. And,
Yeah.
the situation is, though, we've never had a market, a world trade market like we have. I mean, I know that all of us in this room remember that many years ago, that in the middle of winter, you could only get a green grape that had seeds in it. And Chile had the climate and developed that Chilean fruit, and we could get seedless green grapes and red grapes during the winter, and you saw that you can't buy a grape now that's got a seed in it, because Chile developed a market. And because we could ship product and get it here, and it could stay fresh. Unlike a banana that's picked green and it won't actually ripen until they gas it. But, that's the thing that we've developed worldwide, and then we didn't tax them properly coming in, and then they got a foothold, and they worked it, and we've destroyed our own American market, because we didn't properly tax the product coming in, and actually made it cheaper for them to do it as they got better. And, the other other standards is that we need to make sure that we're inspecting that product. We know that there's product, and we've gotten better through the Food and Drug Administration to make sure we're testing that they're not using product that is illegal here in the States.
Is there something in that white box we should know about?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's for Ted. It's just a flag that flew over the Capitol. Yes, ma'am.
Are you on the insurance committee for the state?
I am not.
You're not, okay.
I
Were
am
you
not.
at one time?
I was when I was in the House, correct.
Because I'm trying to figure out, with preventative medicine, when they say you get a screening, like a mammogram screening every year for free, part of your insurance, how when you've had cancer, you've had you've had a mastectomy, how they can charge you for that mammogram going forward.
Under your policy, you mean?
Under the policy, Blue Cross Blue Shield, yeah.
I can ask on that. I have,
Because I'm really,
that, I'm on
Yeah.
health, so that would directly
Yeah.
fall in there. And
Yeah,
I know
because-
that we work really closely with the hospital
'cause
here.
they call it a
on the screening.
bilateral if you haven't had a mastectomy, but once you've had one, they call it a unilateral, and they will not cover 1 cent of it. You have to wait for your deductibles to hit and everything else. It's
Okay.
not considered a screening anymore.
Let us get some information from you, because
Okay.
I'd like to explore that with my
Okay,
friends
thank
at
you.
Blue Cross.
Thank you.
A couple more questions, and then I gotta have another meeting, but what else can I answer real quick?
I have just a real simple one. You know, you're requiring the schools to call, report inappropriate conduct, 60 days. Who do they report the inappropriate conduct to?
Well, if you go to the state school board,
And who establishes, they report it to the state school board? And who establishes inappropriate conduct for students? Is that a state regulation? or
that's a
is it-
great question, I don't know. I can think about it,
Well,
but
it's just
I
like,
don't know.
it's just like, you know, I mean, that could be a pretty broad area,
I would agree
inappropriate
with you.
conduct, you know?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I'll have to find out.
Pretty
That's a
vague.
great question, I don't know.
Well, that's what the bill,
Pretty vague.
bill pass said that you signed, so inappropriate conduct.
Sounds pretty vague.
Or you voted yes on, I shouldn't say you signed, you voted yes on. But they must have changed that, was it longer? It must have been 120 days maybe, and they knocked it down to 60?
It may not have actually had a date.
Ah, maybe that's it.
And then, you know, as you're seeing right now, we've got people coming out of the woodwork from 20 years ago. And how do you go back and investigate? And that's part of the timing that, why we did some of these things, because you lose some of those people, they retire out or they disappear, they're gone. And if you can't investigate within a proper amount of time, you don't necessarily get, that was the same thing under our auto insurance, same thing with the unassigned claims. If you don't investigate that and talk to the person that got put into that situation and they're transient and they disappear, they just lock it in and we're paying for that without finding out that, wait, this never happened in an auto accident. You were on your bike and you tipped over on your bike and we found you on the bike trail. And that's part of our no-fault auto system that we allowed to happen. So we did, you know, we made changes on how fast you can do it. You can't let somebody there, and if it gets past that, you can't claim it. I mean, there's so much fraud, and the same thing with that situation, so.
It's just like with the mental health and suicides, I mean, it's a tough nut to crack.
It is.
And it really shouldn't be a state function I mean, they can't get out of their own way. I can't imagine them solving a complicated problem like that. They don't have enough sense to get out of the rain most times.
No, you be nice now, Steve.
Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here today. Hopefully, we'll see you next month.
If there isn't.
And no snow will be on the
How
ground.
was snowmobiling last year? Was he good?
I didn't get very many days in. I basically have about Sunday after church to ride now. But I was fortunate last year, I was able to use my snowmobile to ride to several district events, which was really kind of cool. So that's how I did my district events, like in Cadillac, the
Well,
trail
you gotta
system
do what Dan
breaks in it,
Benishek
so.
did.
I
You know?
think I got
You do
850
that.
miles in last year, which was better than the year before,
150
so.
miles, that's not much.
No, know what?
What?
It was better than zero, so.
Have you laying in a bed somewhere too.
And I still didn't have a problem paying my $47 trail permit fee,
47?
$47.
More than a quad. Quad's only 25.
Yeah. Yeah.
47, huh? You must be going too fast or something.
No, that's what we do, so. Well, thank you, everybody.
No more
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's true, they
Make
have
sure
more
that
trails.
you get your information.
Yes, sir.
And the trails are groomed and
Talk about
How
that.
you doing?
I come home from Sunday.
Florence and the Flemings, and I started her down the phone. You know her.
Oh, I work for her.
I don't think it's
Can't remember what?
I
Oh, there
will
was
do that.
something I was remembering about, but I can't remember what it was. Something that was said that they were.
I appreciate it.
Wonderful lady.
Where do you, where do you?
Maybe
You'll have to stop in and visit her sometime, she would like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where it is.
She's on Sheep Road.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. What's that?
Paul Bosch, it was, no.
Tonight.
Yeah, she's on Sheep Road.
Where's the one now? Oh, yes, I'll be there for a
Well,
little
give
while,
your
then we got
phone number.
Constitution, no,
I
I'll be
appreciate
there.
it.
Then I got Constitution Day up in Calcasieu right after that,
Really?
yeah.
It is
So-
231.
Busy day.
Hold on a second.
Hey, here's my new card. new
Okay.
address, new phone.
Okay. What'd you do, get kicked out again?
No, we bought a house.
Awesome.
889.
No,
4130.
Okay, Florence.
thank you.
You got it.
I've never forgotten her kind words.
Well, that's, she'd appreciate hearing
Yeah,
that.
after
That's what keeps her going.
14 years of marriage, we finally have our own house.
Well, that's excellent.
Oh,
Good for you. Good for you.
we're quite happy in it.
I bet.
Maybe next time.
We were happy before, so.
I think,
There.